just start with my background. I am Vietnamese of origin, but French born. And my father had started a wine distribution company back in the 60s. So we, as a family, had been distributing French wine, premium wines. But about 11 years ago, we had an opportunity to purchase a vineyard in Chile and started producing more economical wine for our distribution system. And then I was placed in charge of that whole entire operation, everything from the farming to the winemaking to the marketing. And so for the last 10 years, I had been traveling in many different countries where we distribute our wines, to meet with clients, to host different events, to conduct wine dinners and seminars and so on. Because I do have a very good foundation in the wine business and the wine world, growing up practically on the vineyards of our suppliers, and now we have our own vineyard. So I do often have educational seminars throughout the world for the new markets, namely Asia. But cigar smoking had always been my passion. I started smoking when I was 17 years old, my freshman year at the University of Texas in Austin. It was a coincidence by seeing a very enticing magazine ad that really drew my attention and started to ignite my interest. And I started pursuing different types of cigars, starting out with Cuban, but then in the United States, it's not very easy to get. I oftentimes have to get them from Europe, and it became very expensive as a student. So I went out and started exploring with Dominican, Nicaraguan, and so on, and just kind of kept in touch with a lot of my friends that I've met through the cigar smoking events. I usually go to the Big Smoke and the IPCPR, and now it's called the PCA. And then in Europe, there are a few other cigar trade shows that I usually participated, and I met a lot of different people in the industry. People like Jose Oliva, Kaisat and Sotia, Nick Perdomo, and so on. So eventually I was introduced to a gentleman by the name of Juan Rodriguez. He had worked for many different large companies like Davidoff and Fuente and La Aurora before. And he went off to open his own factory, thinking that he could, because he could make a good cigar, that he could make a name for himself and sell the cigars. But it's a totally different world. You can be an artist, but maybe you don't have the resources or the ability to bring your cigars to the international market, then it's not economically feasible. As you probably know, within the Dominican Republic, cigars are practically free. You can walk into a factory and ask for cigars and they would give them to you. So there's really no real market for domestic cigar distribution. And so through our meetings about 4 years ago, he proposed that that I invest in his company so that he can have the resources to promote the cigars outside of the Dominican Republic, or just purchase the factory and he can make my cigars in my own brand. And then I've always been interested in the cigar industry, but only as a consumer. And now a business proposition came across me, and I was a little intrigued. So I started looking into it. And then I remember that everywhere I went in the world, I always brought the cigars with me and introduced to my friends and my customers. And they have always asked me why I don't distribute cigars too. So it's not a bad idea to go into this business, because I already practically have a distribution system with the wine, which coincide many times with the cigars. And so I started collaborating with Juan Rodriguez, reorganized the company a little bit, and started making SYN. The name SYN is the first 3 letters of the word synopsis, which is the name of our vineyard. It's called Synopsis Winery. And the reason why I named it Synopsis 11 years ago when I purchased the vineyard, sorry, are we still there? A call just came in, so is everyone still online?
Yeah.
Okay, great. All right. So I had to rename the vineyard because it was under a former family's name. And I was looking for a name that would resonate me as a person, my passions, and what I do. But then it also has to have some kind of an intellectual flair to it, an artistic flair to it, because I'm French born and I grew up in an environment where we have a lot of arts around, we have a lot of architecture and beautiful gardens, very nice salons. So I always want to do something that would have ties to humanity, ties to history, culture, and the art world. And so I named it Synopsis, which is a summary of a story. And the reason for that is because I grew up loving to read novels. I've read everything from Victor Hugo to Voltaire to Dostoevsky, Chekhov, Tolstoy, all the classics. And that's where I derive a lot of my inspiration for the world, and derive a lot of observations and analyzation of humanity. So when I named it Synopsis, it represents a story about every aspect of life. Everything about life is very abundant, but then you have to have the synopsis of it in order to explore further. So nowadays, I don't have time to read books anymore, so I read a lot of synopsis. And for people who come to me and say, okay, wine is such a rich culture, and we don't have enough knowledge to it, how do we enjoy wine? I said, well, you have to start with a synopsis. Just like if you don't know if you enjoy the book or not, you have to read the synopsis. So it's kind of like a marketing point, which is kind of funny. And so when I decided to name the cigar, I take the first three letters, SYN, because synopsis seemed to be such a long word to put on a cigar band. And also most people don't even know what it means. But in the cigar world, people tend to be less, I don't want to say less sophisticated, but more casual. So the word SYN kind of resonates with that industry because everything about cigars is strength and masculinity and ruggedness and so on. So when you pronounce SYN, it sounds like SIN, which is also very interesting. It's about indulgences. Smoking a cigar could be a sin, or eating too much chocolates, or drinking too much whiskeys, or doing too much of anything that you really enjoy could be a sin. So the first two blends that I and Juan Rodriguez conceived were called the original SYNs. And you've seen the Maduro wrapper and the Habano wrapper. Each of our SYN cigars composed of at least 4 different types of tobacco in the filler. A lot of cigar makers just do 2, but we do 4 different types. And you probably can see that in our brochure. And for those of you who have not had the cardboard, the cardstock brochure, there is the electronic brochure, which I've sent to Jerry, and maybe Michael can forward to whomever that doesn't have it yet. You can see the descriptions of each of our cigars with the filler, the name, binder, and also the wrapper. So naturally the next collection we produced is called the 7 Deadly Sins, just to play off on the word sin. And the idea behind that is that we don't know what the market would like in terms of our blends. So we introduce our blends first before we introduce different sizes. So we have the 7 different blends in 7 different sizes that each one represents a particular sin according to its flavor profile and its strength, but also its size. For example, the gula, which is synonymous with gluttony, is fat and stubby, and it's as far as the flavors, it's a medium body, but it's creamy. When you think about gluttony, you think about butter, you think about fat, you think about sweetness, and so it has all of that. And with respect to let's pick another example. Let's say the suburbia, which is Pride. Pride, we like it for it to be elegant, so it's the Churchill size, and then the wrapper is a Ecuadorian Connecticut, which is very blonde, very it's like gold, very nice looking. So it represents pride in that respect. And a prideful person is not somebody who is very strong in personality, who is not someone who is very assertive. So the taste is actually mild to medium. That's how we design it. When you look at somebody who is pride, elegant, tend to be softer, and that's our concept. And so that's the suburbia. Contrary to that is our Nvidia, which has a lot of strength, and it is a dark San Andre wrapper, and that cigar represents envy, and it's called Nvidia. So when you think about the SYN, the envy is probably the most dangerous sin to another person. When you're envious of someone, you don't necessarily voice your opinion. You could be very pretentious and very artificial about it, but deep inside, you are envious of that person. And so we decided to make that the shape of the cigar a figurado. It's a Salomon, but it's a figurado. So we press it, and it has a pointy. So it's indicative of stabbing people in the back. When you're envious of somebody, you may try to be friendly up front, but then you can stab somebody in the back. And then the pressed indicated that when you are envious of someone, you are actually bent out of your own shape. You want to be that person, but you can't be. So a lot of the cigars that I make, I always have to think about how does it relate to that particular concept? And that's what I would like to translate to the world about everything that we do. We have to pay attention to nature. We have to pay attention to different elements. And it's part of being mindfulness. We have a lot of things talking about mindfulness these days. So when a person picks up a SYN cigar, I would like for him to question, why is it this shape? Why does it taste like this? But then there are always all these very intelligent answers. So that's what sets us apart from the other brands, which are selling in the same demographic, the same price points, which they don't really care so much about the smoker, because I always think that, cigar smokers are really not sophisticated. They just want to pass some time, but it's not true. But even if it is true, I would like to elevate those people to a different level, to a higher level of intellect and a higher level of appreciation, and not just a material one. Yeah. Okay. So much of that. Any questions so far?
No. Your smallest. Oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Gerald.
The smallest cigar that you have that's actually shorter than a nub, Joseph.
Mm-hmm.
Is there 4 types of tobacco in that?
Yes, everything has 4 types of tobacco. That you're talking about the acedia, which is laziness, and that's our Corona. And again, the shape and the size is indicative of someone who's lazy. If you're lazy, you don't grow. You tend to be tiny and stingy and so on. So it's kind of funny with that. Yeah, but we all have. And I demand the 4 types of tobacco for the complexity, because in the cigar we need, for me, the priority in the cigar is the flavor, and the next would be the strength, and then we have to have the aroma, but then the complexity has to be there, otherwise it becomes boring. And then we have to use aged tobacco. All of our fillers are 5 years aged, so that